Good evening and welcome to the November 2nd Clearwater City Council meeting. I'd ask that you please rise and join the Pastor Ray Chester from West Coast Church for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is the pastor here? Okay. Who would like to step in? Please. Come up here. Yes.
Father in heaven, we thank you for the leaders of our city. We thank you for our city, and we do pause now to pray your blessing upon all of our citizens, all the things that form the fabric of our community. We do seek your blessing. Lord, I pray for these leaders. I thank you for their service, their commitment, the sacrifices they make to serve all of us, to make this a good community with healthy relationships where people can grow and flourish and do that which is right and good and just. Lord, would you give them wisdom, I pray tonight. Would you bless them and this meeting? And I pray this in the name of my Savior, Jesus. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Willie, for stepping in there. We appreciate that very much. Let's start with the introductions of the dais. To my far left is our City Manager, Jennifer Poirier. Next to her is our City Attorney, David Margolis.
Good evening.
To my immediate right is our Vice Mayor, Mark Bunker.
Good evening.
Next to him is Councilmember Kathleen Beckman.
Good evening.
Next to her is Councilmember David Albritton. Good evening. And next to him is Councilmember Alina Teixeira.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you all for being here. We have some special recognitions. We're going to start with a proclamation for National Small Business Week. If we could have Christopher Odgers from the Florida Association of Veteran-Owned Businesses, National Veteran Small Businesses, pardon me. Please come forward. Whereas in 2015, a resolution was introduced to the United States Congress to designate the first week in November as National Veteran Small Business Week, and whereas Pinellas County is home to more than 9,000 veteran-owned firms generating more than $3.9 billion in annual sales per the U.S. Census Bureau, the 2012 Economic Census Survey of Business Owners, and whereas the Florida Association of Veteran-Owned Businesses is a nonprofit entity that advocates, educates, and connects our veteran-owned businesses to economic opportunity, with 450 veteran-owned businesses and patriotic supporter non-veteran businesses as members in 5 chapters across the state of Florida. And whereas National Veteran Small Business Week is dedicated to supporting veteran entrepreneurs and business owners and their families, and to encourage people to purchase goods and services from these hardworking men and women. Whereas Florida veterans and their families deserve our unwavering support and gratitude. Now, therefore, I, Brian Unk, Senior Mayor of the City of Clearwater, Florida, on behalf of the Clearwater City Council, do hereby proclaim October 30th through November 3rd, 2023, to be Veteran Small Business Week in the City of Clearwater, and call upon all residents to recognize the contributions of our community's local veteran-owned businesses and the key role they play in keeping our economy strong.
Thank you. My name is Pete Bloom, and I'm actually standing in for Chris today, and I am the chairman of the Greater Tampa Bay chapter of the Florida Veteran-Owned Business Association. And I wanted to say on behalf of the organization, thank you for supporting veterans and Veteran Small Business Week. I saw up there on the screen earlier that it said we're hiring, and I just wanted to say that there are many ways to support veterans. Of course, through our organization, you can search and find the services that you might need for your city. Also, any company, state, we can hire veterans, and there's something called the Skill Bridge program. So please share that with anybody that you know who is a qualifying business, because they could get a veteran from 30 days to 60 days for free to do work at your company. And so that's a great program. that you could take advantage of. And they still get paid by the military, so don't worry, they're getting paid. So thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, and keep up the great work for our veterans in our community. And now if we could have John Dragan, Executive Director of the Suncoast Jazz Festival, please come forward. Joan, oh, I'm sorry. I guess my reading needs to be a little better this evening. Joan Dragan. Whereas the art of creating jazz music is a uniquely American form of music that originated over 100 years ago and that has influenced and enriched not only American music and culture, but also the music and culture of the world. And whereas the Suncoast Jazz Festival is in its 32nd year and brings increased attention to the city of Clearwater and its diverse and vibrant cultural arts, and whereas the Suncoast Jazz Festival continues to feature local, national, and international musicians, and whereas the mission of the Suncoast Jazz Festival and its volunteers is to contribute to the education of local young musicians to give them performance opportunities, and this year we'll host 2 master classes for local students to foster the preservation of jazz. Now therefore, I, Brian Unk, Sr., Mayor of the City of Clearwater, Florida, on behalf of the Clearwater City Council, do hereby proclaim November 17th through the 19th, 2023 to be Suncoast Jazz Festival weekend in Clearwater.
I look around and I see some new faces here tonight because sometimes I think we're still one of the best kept secrets in the area. But I really want to thank you all on behalf of the Suncoast Jazz Festival. Dave was director for about 8 years before I started. And here we are 33 years later with the help of Russ Kimball, all the great people at the Sheraton and over in the Marriott. We're still growing strong, bringing jazz to the community and having master classes for the young kids. Jason Marsalis is leading those this year. We have 80 musicians. We have a 2-time Grammy winner with us this year, Ranky Tanky. Kermit Ruffins, who's sort of the soul of New Orleans jazz. There's really something for everybody. And this is the weekend of November 17th to 19th. We start out at the pool in the morning. The majority, all the festival except for that is inside. From morning to night, 3 or 4 venues going all the time. Wonderful, wonderful jazz music. So I hope we see some of you down there. And thank you all so much for supporting us. We really appreciate it. We love being part of the Clearwater Jazz and Arts community. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, thank you for the Suncoast Jazz Festival folks for coming out. Now it's time for the Charter Review Committee final report, and we have the chairman, Nathan Hightower, here to present that to us. Nathan, please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff. It's my pleasure to be here tonight.
Mr. Taylor, you're out of order. You're against the council rules. You're disrupting the meeting. Please stop. Please stop. You're sticking your middle finger up, and that's not appropriate. You're disrupting the meeting. You're disrupting the meeting. Okay. This is not the time for you to talk, okay? You're disrupting me. Please stop. I asked you to stop, that's all. Okay, let's go. Nathan, go ahead. We're going to ask you to leave. We're going to ask you to leave if you're disrupting the meeting. You know the council rules. All right. Stop talking right now. It's not your turn to talk. You can talk when it's your time, okay? Just stop disrupting my meeting, okay? That's simple as that. That's all I'm asking you to. I'm asking you very politely. That's all I'm asking you. Okay? Please continue, Mr. Hightower.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to present to you, the group tonight, the report, or the final report of the Charter Review Committee that met for the last 7 months. As you can, we have been a little bit of a topic of conversation in at least one previous meeting, so I made sure Pastor Willie came, bringing out the big guns. Bless us to start off with. I think all of you have seen the committee report. The first thing I'd like to do is to recognize the hardworking members of our committee. We have several of them here in the room. My vice chair was Bill Johnson, Mr. Johnson, Gladys Andrews, Corey Chase, Ryan Cotton, Ms. Cunningham, Karen Cunningham, Kathy Milam, Travis Norton, Mike Reardon, Patricia Rodriguez, and Jonathan Wade. I also want to recognize and thank the hardworking city staff people that supported us and put up with me, who have known to be somewhat irascible at times. Rosemary, thank you. Nicole, thank you. And David, thank you very much for attending all of our meetings and keeping us on the straight and narrow. We needed a good lawyer in the room. With regards to the report, what I'd like to do first is utilize the fact that I have the pulpit and speak a little bit about reflections on the process. And I've listed these out here. The first one, and a lot of this is consensus of the group, and some of it is opinion, and I'll try to make sure that I differentiate the two. The first is I wanted to comment that I think we had a very diverse group that recognized different backgrounds in our Clearwater community. It was very enlightening to me, the committee, from the various viewpoints that they had. So I think we had a good collection and a good representation of the thoughts of the city. Many of the members had prior experience. Either we had a prior council member, we had prior charter review committee members, and we had quite a few members that were on some committee of the city. And that was a good thing in some ways, and as an editorial comment, it was a bad thing in some ways, but not in a bad way, and I know that seems a little strange, but I think a consensus of our committee was we'd like to see some new blood, some fresh blood in the charter review process. I use the terminology younger in my report. Don't necessarily mean young age, but young in maybe experience in dealing with multiple committees within the city. I think sometimes, and I speak for myself as well as being on a committee for over 15 years for the city, you sometimes get in a little bit of a rut and you don't think outside the box. And I think part of the Charter Review Committee's charge is to think a little bit outside the box, make some advisory comments and recommendations for the elected officials to determine which ones they think have merit and then move on them. So that's just a reflection that I think a lot of us had with regards to the makeup of the members. There's been some comment in public about a lack of discussions and opportunities to discuss. I was at all but 2 meetings, and I can report firsthand that all of our committee members spoke. All of our committee members had the opportunity to speak on issues. And while there's always in a group of 10 or 11 those that elect to speak more than others, nobody was drowned out as far as having the opportunity to give their opinions. You could see by the full report that you all have received that indicated the votes on some of the matters, that there were very close votes. And that shows that there were differences of opinion. And nobody was upset with each other. I thought everybody conducted themselves with great decorum. We had very high-level discussions, and we voted. And we presented those votes, and sometimes we revisit them, and vote might have changed a little bit, but not enough to make a significant change. But I did want to address the fact that I think those comments are really not accurate, that people did not have the opportunity to speak. I want to compliment the city staff and Mr. Margolis. They were there. They had us prepared. They would provide things to the committee on a timely basis ahead of time so we could be prepared and we could review. I was somehow got elected chair in absentia the first meeting I wasn't there, and pitched a fit with Ms. Call to let me appear by telephone, and she punished me by having me get somehow elected as chairperson. So that's why I have the privilege of being here to speak with you tonight. Suggestions for the future, and some of these I want to emphasize, they're not criticisms, they're just observations. Number one, an early explanation to the committee of the timetable as to when things need to come to you in order to go on a referendum. I'm going to show my age here a little bit, but there's a famous saying from a movie, Cool Hand Luke, and maybe some of you remember that, and that famous quote was, "What we've got here is failure to communicate." And I think we suffered some of that here. We did get a full and complete explanation late in the process from Mr. Margolis about the timing that might be necessary in order for a resolution to be written correctly, submitted through the clerk's process. I know I've never been on a charter committee before. I was not aware of the intricacies that it might take and the length of time that it might take. And I've heard some other charter members say the same thing. So I think in future charter meetings, if that could be clear, perhaps at the very beginning of the first meeting or two, where we get a timetable that really has a date that if you want to submit something that's significant for your consideration, that this is the time frame it really needs to be there. I think that would be very helpful. This particular council, to my knowledge, I'd asked Rosemary to correct me, did not submit any comments or any issues for us to consider. Previous councils, I understand, have done that, and we actually got a list of previous matters that previous charter review committees had looked at. But we didn't get anything from this particular council. Now, there was a good bit going on with this council about the time that we were selected and were sworn in with the city manager change and the mayor change, and that may have been an explanation for that. But I would encourage you to submit that early on as a council or future councils to us, because we'll certainly take up those issues and spend significant time on it. With regards to the commentary about new blood or fresh blood, I understand that a person has to submit their willingness to be in the pool in order to be selected. And that can cause the pool to be relatively small. I would encourage the city to start the process of encouraging potential members to be on this committee earlier before that committee gets selected. I'd also expand maybe the process in which you seek memberships. I know one of our members suggested making a pitch to some of the local universities to see if there might be a student or two taking a government classes or interested in government that might be a potential candidate.
as well as other members of the community to encourage it. It is an important function, and we would like to see a bigger pool for your successors to choose from. I would suggest that each council make it a point to attend, each council member make it a point to attend at least one meeting. There were some comments made about not being invited. Again, I haven't been on a charter committee before. I wasn't aware that we needed to invite council members. Last time I checked, they were open to the public. Council member is a member of the public. They were certainly welcome to come. I asked about past charter review committees and was told it was not a regular occurrence where council members were invited. Not that some didn't attend. There were some, when the strong mayor issue was debated, there were some council members that spoke at that committee meeting. So I think that would be just as a matter of course, if a council member could attend one, I think that would be helpful for them, express what their thoughts are, and would also be appreciated by the membership. Patience. Again, I talked about the failure to communicate. We didn't have, or at least I as the chairman, didn't have a concept of the time that you would need in order to consider what we were doing. I've listened to the council minutes where there was some discussion with all of you about timing and about most of it centered on the election and the runoff issue. We had vigorous discussions about both moving the elections or not, or going to a runoff or not. I know that all of you are aware of that. You've read the minutes and saw that there was a pretty divided group, which is fine. That's just fine. We do, I think, and there was, of course, figures it would be at a meeting that I was not there, so my vice chair, Mr. Johnson, was in charge, and I got back in town and find out that he's been unanimously voted to write a letter to you all about our dissatisfaction. And I want to make it clear what that dissatisfaction was. It wasn't about whether or not you agreed or disagreed with the vote that the committee made on runoff elections. It was all about the timing, all about the timing. So again, I reemphasize that I think that the failure to communicate led to that misunderstanding from our standpoint, which probably caused issues that we were dealing with to get to you later than it should have gotten. On the other hand, and I listened to Councilmember Texera several times and what you had to say at the meeting. I understand that you wanted to be bold, but I appreciate the commentary that all of you made about allowing us to do what our job was. However, that has to be done in conjunction with the timing that it takes to get the resolution, to get the thing on the ballot. So, and we understand that. So I think just clearing that up in the future, we won't have these types of issues. I put in my comments to consider the frequency of the charter review. You see in one of the recommendations, we discussed it, and we decided that every 5 years it should stay that way. I still think it's worthy of consideration. Our committee, and I don't know what the exact vote was, thought that 5 years was a good regular time. I think as Mr. Margolis has pointed out, it can meet more frequently. It just has to meet at least every 5 years. So I would ask the council to consider whether that's appropriate or whether that should be looked at. I know a lot of cities around have longer periods of time between their charter review committees, meetings, and work. Now actually getting down to what the recommendations were. The first recommendation that we make was to change the charter to deal with how a council member can no longer be on the council due to failure to attend meetings. And we are suggesting that the change to read that if you fail to attend 3 consecutive regular council meetings, unless those absences are excused, that be grounds for removal. The second item that we talked with, and we talked about this early on, but again, the council moved quickly and moved ahead of our recommendations, was for you all to get paid more money. There was a lot of strong feeling. In fact, I think it was unanimous on the committee that of all the work and the time that a council member puts in, and especially what the mayor has to put in, that the compensation was well below market. We spent a lot of meetings looking at what should that compensation be. Should it be formulaic? Should it be based on cost of living? Should it be a mean or an average of other cities of our size? We finally arrived at numbers. You all made your own determinations, and they weren't that far off. So again, that was something that we spent a good amount of time on and early in the process. Again, I spoke about the frequency of the charter review for every 5 years. It was the consensus of our group that it would remain at 5 years. The fourth item was to retain the current voting system in place. And again, I want to emphasize there was strong opinions on both sides. There was a lot of debate in that regard, and the vote turned out to leave it the way it is. And again, I want to emphasize that, to my knowledge, we don't have a problem with 3 members of the council wanting to put that before the citizenry. It's just this was our advice as a committee from a 6-4 vote was to leave it as is. The fifth recommendation we made is for an investigation of districts. There was a lot of discussion and some strong feelings by a few of our members that districts were the way to go. We heard about how districts would be cheaper for a candidate. It would allow for more equal representation among various members of the community. So we thought that it wasn't appropriate to just come out with a recommendation that we go to districts. There's a lot of issues that go along with a district form of government. Mr. Margolis was very helpful in that regard in talking about various issues that would roll off of a decision to go to districts. And so we simply recommend that it be looked at as a possibility in the future, and that the city retain some outside expert to assist in looking at how, if we did go to a district model, how would it be split up? Because there are a number of different ways to do that. We had no specific recommendation on what that would be. Diversity. We had a diverse group, and there was a lot of consensus about seeking to get or find ways to get more diversity on the council. And a recommendation that we made is to look at increasing the number of council member seats from 5 to 7, which would include the mayor in the 7. Obviously, we wanted to keep an odd number for voting purposes, and there are financial implications of that and other implications of that, but that was a pretty strongly felt desire by our committee, was to look from going from 5 to 7. We talked about the CNC's report that came out. That's the Neighborhood Coalition's report that was reported to us, that had been delivered to the council a year to a year and a half ago. A lot of the discussion was about citizens' input that's done at those meetings that deal with zoning and land use, and whether or not that's admitted as evidence or can't be admitted as evidence. And there were some recommendations in that CNC leveling the playing field report that our group felt like council ought to have the city attorney take a look at and see if there's something that should be implemented there, which may require ordinance changes necessary. So that's what that was all about. We recommended that the council consider adopting a procedure to include quarterly council effectiveness discussions, most likely at a work session, just to talk about what goals and objectives that each council member had and how effective they've been, or the group has been, on a quarterly basis. Our next recommendation was to amend section 2.01C1, which has to do with the annual performance. And we were asking that the council put on change the charter, for the charter to read that each October at a public meeting that they would present a report on the evaluation of the performance of the city manager and city attorney, including the following steps. I'm going to have to pull my glasses out. Each year, the council would adopt annual key performance indicators and objectives separately for the city manager and the city attorney positions. Each council member would present in October a written evaluation report for each officer, which should include at a minimum performance comments against the common council adopted key performance indicators and objectives for that position. Again, this discussion stemmed from the circumstances that arose with our prior city manager, and the fact that that may have been a little bit of a surprise when the vote came up with regards to his continued holding that position. And the thought was that if there were more periodic reviews and transparent reviews, that would be helpful to the citizenry as well as to the council. Number 10, I spoke about this. There was a unanimous vote to send a letter addressing the committee's concerns about timing, about this group taking steps prior to us making our reports. Our next recommendation was that continuing education be considered for council members from the Florida League of Cities and FEMA. This is not too dissimilar from suggestions that I've heard on the Pension Advisory Committee and some of the other committees about getting some education for a new council member or a new member of the committee, just to get a little bit more up to speed on things that are going on and the types of issues that you'll have to deal with. Our next item was to amend Charter Section 3.02B by adding the following. If the majority, but not 4 council members, vote to remove the city manager, then the city manager shall be placed on paid administrative leave until the second meeting vote. During this period, the longest-serving assistant city manager shall function as the acting city manager. Again, this was a repercussion of what had occurred last year with Mr. Jennings, and that there was a less than 4 vote about Mr. Jennings' continued position at the first meeting, and there was a little uncertainty, I think, or maybe some awkwardness about what happens in the interim between the first meeting and the second meeting. I don't think this was a novel idea. I'm sure it had been discussed and considered before, but of course, to my knowledge, the city had never gone through that situation before. So we think it would be good to try to, now that we've seen what happens, that perhaps the charter should allow for what would happen in that event. Our 13th proposal was that we add a preamble to the charter, which would appear before the individual sections. And that preamble would read, "We the people of the city of Clearwater, under the Constitution and laws of the state of Florida, in order to form a more perfect city with high-performing government which affords equity and inclusion, economic opportunity, foster community well-being, environmental stewardship, and superior public service, do hereby adopt this charter and confer upon the city the following powers, subject to the following restrictions and prescribed by the following procedures and government structure." We spent a good bit of time crafting that language and down to the word, and would sincerely hope that there would be favorable consideration to amending the charter to include that preamble. Last, there was a consensus to have the city attorney draft language recommending that the council evaluate and discuss base salary levels of the mayor and council members every 2 years. That stemmed from the earlier discussion that we had about compensation for you and the awkwardness that that can cause sitting members to talk about what their pay might be, which seems to be a universal awkwardness from Washington on down. So we think if you had something like this in place, then every so often it has to be discussed. So instead, it kind of takes that onus off of the person that has to bring it up. You have, again, as I mentioned, the official minutes that Ms. Call had kept that has the list of who moved and who seconded each thing, what the votes were, for your interest. There are at least 3 members of our committee that are in the audience. If any of them would like to speak, I would yield the floor to them. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Cunningham.
Just wanted to assure you that in our first few meetings that we did go over the recommendations that were made when this committee was appointed. There was a discussion then about what Mayor Hibbert asked, what you wanted to see the council, or what you wanted to see the committee do, and we did go over that. So I didn't want you to think that we've forgotten it completely.
Thank you.
In conclusion, for my remarks, it was an honor and a privilege to be selected to be on this committee. It was an honor to be selected to be the chair of the committee by my peers on the committee. Of course, I didn't know at the time that I would be called upon to make this presentation. I think all of them probably did. But anyway, I appreciate them. Oh, Mr. Johnson, you wish to?
I'd like to, and I am Bill Johnson, and was privileged to be appointed by this body to the committee. I've never served that way before, and it was a great example of a committee working together, not with unified comments, but working together. And one of the recommendations that we had was to consider a procedure or rule so the council would talk about the effectiveness of your discussions. You have to operate in the sunshine, and so there's no way that you can talk amongst each other over a cup of coffee. We're suggesting that quarterly, you might want to talk about, hey, how's things going? Are we, and to find out if you are all getting the same communication with the city manager or the city staff, going back again to the problem with the previous city manager, where there were apparently different communications going on. So we'd encourage you to have that discussion, and it's going to have to be in the sunshine, so that's fine. The only other comment I would make is on adding the 7 members, or going to 7 members of the council. You have a lot of responsibilities as the city of Clearwater on regional boards. And some of the council, or some of the committee members, were concerned about the amount of time that is required by all those regional boards that would make it difficult for an employed person to be able to serve on the council. And so that would provide or address that issue in addition to providing increased diversity. And thank you again for allowing us to present these comments.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. We appreciate it. Job well done. And Mr. Hightower, you want to stay there for a second? Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Hightower? Yes, Mr. Albritton.
Keep forgetting to turn the mic on. There was some discrepancies. We had to move kind of fast on a couple of issues and kind of caught us off guard as well as far as the timing issue. And we're sorry about that, but that's just the way that worked out. But, you know, I went through this whole list here of things that you all talked about, and And they weren't too different than other charter reviews. I mean, there's a certain amount of things that every charter review talks about. And, you know, I just went through and looked at it. I really didn't have any discrepancies on any of these. I mean, I had some questions on some of them, and you pretty much answered them. But I liked pretty much everything that you came up with on this this sheet. So I hope we have ample time to discuss this amongst ourselves, and maybe a little different. Maybe when I was on charter review, it didn't seem like they, you know, took much of what we said, but maybe this time we can all get together and come up with some changes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We didn't talk about strong mayor, I can tell you that.
I think that was put to bed.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I do. Thank you for your work. I appreciate it. So it's interesting that Councilmember Alberton said you like everything, but it's my understanding that tonight is when we give direction if it's going to, anything's going to be put on a ballot in March. Is that correct?
No. I mean, I just got this at noon today. I have not had a chance to digest everything.
But
There's
I
no
mean,
way I'm
if-
ready to support everything tonight.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll say it this way. If the council gave direction tonight, I do believe there is sufficient time to meet the March ballot. If that is not the case, and if there's no direction given this evening for any of these, there may be one more opportunity to meet the deadline. I see the clerk kind of slightly nodding. So I think there may be one more opportunity for us to do that for March. Barring that, you know, the council always has the ability to call a special election at any time. However, realistically, you know, does the council actually want to pay for and schedule a special election, say, in the middle of June, July? I don't know, you know, that would be a council decision. But when it comes to the March timing, that direction would preferably either be given tonight or given in the next, you know, week or two at the latest.
So it is unfortunate that you've done this work and we're not able to put much of any of the recommendations or have a robust couple of meetings discussion about what we might want to put on a ballot and how that might, how that language might be shaped. But I thank you for all this work. I did have a couple of questions about I think it's the 13th one, about this preamble before the charter. I was, wanting to know what weight or significance that might carry with it. I appreciate the language, I agree with the language, but I'm wondering the rationale and the weight of that language.
Well, as to the weight, I would defer to Mr. Margolis to opine, as he's the legal representative for the city and would have to interpret that. I think the rationale for it was to try to capture what the essence is of the city's charge and the city's government, the governance of the city, and what the various criteria are that the governance of the city should consider.
And adding that language would have to go on a charter amendment?
Well, the recommendation of the committee was to add it to the charter. I have been very careful with the committee not to either say that I support or oppose any particular recommendation. So I would say that I'm neutral as to the wisdom of the proposal as well as whether it should go in the charter, but certainly the recommendation of the committee was that it would go in the charter. As far as the legal effect goes, I don't know that there would be a lot of direct legal effect. I think that it would be probably viewed in two ways. One is that it could be viewed through a political lens. If the council were considering ordinances in the future, then perhaps the council might look back to this as a way of saying, okay, the council should consider whatever ordinance that is in light of this charter. What political weight that carries would be up to individual council members to assign. The only real legal impact I could foresee would be a situation where we were litigating an interpretation of the city charter or interpreting an ordinance, perhaps one that's ambiguous or one that's not entirely clear. And in court, perhaps the ordinance that's ambiguous would be interpreted in this lens. But given how broadly this language is written, I don't know how much weight a court would necessarily assign to one factor or another, or whether a court might prioritize them in order. So for example, if we have an ambiguous ordinance and the court is saying, okay, we'll start with more perfect city, but what does that mean to everyone? So the court's probably going to skip that. So then we say move to high-performing government. Well, they might interpret it in light of high-performing government, but that might mean different things to different people. So the court might go to the third one and say, we'll interpret it in light of equity and inclusion. What does that mean? And so the court might go down the list to look at ordinances to see, or look at other charter provisions to see if it's consistent with that, but that would be an unusual circumstance. We don't get into a lot of litigation on the charter, and certainly, I'm proud to say that as long as I'm city attorney, we have not had that situation. So I don't think there would be a whole lot of legal impact for it. I would probably view it more as an aspirational statement, almost more like the preamble to the United States Constitution, over which, this is modeled after.
Okay. And then I had a question too about the first recommendation, about council members who failed to attend 3 consecutive meetings. I just wonder what the impetus of that was, because I think I haven't noticed much of an attendance problem with the council.
I really don't have a recollection of what the impetus was for that.
Okay.
I think there was just a thought that if someone is if a member of the council was chronically not attending in an unexcused manner, that they shouldn't, that should not be allowed.
And then finally, I think I have a question about number 8, the procedure about, and so this is just a recommendation about procedure of the quality of council effectiveness and discussions quarterly. And that, are you envisioning us talking about, candidly, about what our own kind of individual goals are that we're working towards, our pet projects or high-interest initiatives that we might have individually, to share how are we doing with those and collaborate so that we can each be successful? Is that what you're thinking?
I think that, and I think Mr. Johnson kind of touched on that too in his remarks, because of the somewhat restrictive nature of the Sunshine Law, that having that would allow an opportunity to have pretty frequent discussions out in the open about those types of things.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes.
Just a comment. After the 2020 election, there was some concern from advisory boards that having a council member in attendance was rather distracting or intimidating. So we've been discouraged from attending meetings. Otherwise, I think many of us would have come to the Charter Review Board.
Well, our committee group was a pretty intimidating group.
Anything else for Mr. Hightower?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir, and thank your committee for the stellar job they did, and we appreciate the time, and we know it's a heavy lift, so thank you very much.
There is one last thing, though. I believe, unless we get discharged, we're still subject to the sunshine rules ourselves, and I'd love to talk to some people about this.
So do we need a motion to do that?
So I just need direction because I'll have to bring up an agenda item back to council to disband them.
Yes. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
I'm really excited to do this presentation because as I was working with the various departments to put together the presentation and go through the amount of things that our staff has done this year, it was nothing short of incredible. And that's what this is to go over all the things that we have accomplished in this year. Bear with me as I learn this technology. So tonight, what we're going to go over is we're going to start with a review of our financial health, and then we're going to go through the accomplishments that we have made as a team. After that, I'll go into closing in terms of what we want to focus on in the next year. We're going to start by talking about the city's financial health. As you know, the city requires a minimum fund balance for all of our 15 funds. While the financial reports are not completed yet, they'll be done later this year. I'm happy to report that in our unaudited financial information forecast that all of our funds are in compliance with those regulations. This is due in great part to the careful, strategic approach to how the city has planned and implemented operating its capital budgets. Throughout this process, staff was focused on reviewing departmental operations to make sure that the money that we spend is in the community's best interest. I want to acknowledge the hard work of the Finance Director, Jay Ravens, and the Budget Director, Kaylin Castell, through this budget process. I also want to acknowledge the additional communication tools that the budget staff has put out to make sure that both the council and the community knows how to understand and engage with our budget. This evening, I did pass out a new tool. All of these are available online that they came up with to just set the stage on how we're going to prepare for our budget, including with our strategic plan that's coming up in January. As you know, we have $190 million in general fund reserves for the last fiscal year. Our millage rate for last year was 5.885 mils, which you can see accounts for 43% of our general fund budget. Property taxes are our largest revenue fund that the city has, and it's a stable fund once it's approved. 16% of the revenues that are generated through franchise and utility fees are based on utility use. Another 16% is generated by intergovernmental sources, like taxes collected by other entities that we receive shares of. Then we have smaller amounts of money from miscellaneous fees and other taxes. This is where our revenues come from. The majority of our operating expenses are associated with our personnel. The budget included 1,876 full-time equivalent positions that are spread over 20 departments. But like many, we're experiencing a number of vacancies throughout our workforce, and I found it difficult to fill many of our positions. That's also what makes tonight so incredible, is the number of things that we were to accomplish, although being significantly short-staffed. At the end of the fiscal year, the city employed 1,684 of those full and part-time positions to fill the 1,876. We also employ 365 temporary, seasonal, and variable part-time employees. Without the city's outstanding workforce focused on operational responsibilities, none of what we would have accomplished would be possible. And as I go through these accomplishments, understand this is not all we've done. These are just the highlights, and it was not easy to pick ones to try and keep this in somewhat of a reasonable time frame of a presentation. We know, as we just showed, that our employees are our largest operational cost, but they're also our greatest benefit. In fiscal year 22-23, our operating expenditures were budgeted at over $200 million. 44% of those expenditures were planned to fund public safety. The majority of the remaining operating expenditures went to support the quality of life, mainly services of Parks and Recreation and the library system. That accounted for 24%. This year, administrative other category was 22% of the total, with Public Works at 6% and Planning and Development at 4%. It's important to note that these only represent the general fund. So getting into our accomplishments. I'm going to present what we have accomplished throughout the year as a city, and again, this is just a small sampling of all the things that we've done. I want to remind you all that these successes would not have been possible without the outstanding staff and the professionalism of our employees in this incredible workforce. I'm proud of the teams who work hard every day to accomplish what we have. To our employees, thank you for all the work that you do each and every day. So this one, as most of you know, is my biggest source of pride. And for one of the main reasons, and you're going to see a theme throughout this, we're really focusing on coordinated collaboration. It was something that when we got the new team in place that we said we wanted to focus on, where we have multiple departments work together, make sure we have the right people in the room to do things, and this is a perfect example of that. So many departments worked to accomplish this. The 5 key priorities citywide include high-performing government, superior public service, environmental stewardship, community well-being, and economic and housing opportunity. You all should have a copy of the strategic plan in front of you. I'm going to reference it on every accomplishment. That might get a little annoying, but I want everybody to understand the importance and the significance of this document. We are using it. I know you all are using it. We're sharing it with the community so everybody understands our why and what it is that we're working towards. In addition to this, the city led a robust planning and a way to develop and prioritize our operational and capital budgets, which tied directly into this plan. This plan serves as our roadmap for all the work we do here at the city and for everything that we hope to accomplish next year and in the years to come. Each year, we will evaluate the effectiveness of the strategic plan. Our next meeting will be on January 30th to do just that. The creation of this plan ties into Objective 1.1. Another example of coordinated collaboration. Every single department was involved in the redevelopment and grand opening of Coachman Park. It was a momentous occasion that featured a lineup of events, concerts, and the return of Clearwater Celebrates America. The grand opening drew more than 50,000 attendees over the week, and it serves as the largest event in Clearwater's history. And it went off without a hitch. The city established a partnership with the operators of the Sound to host a minimum of 32 events each year. We began to work to incorporate public art installations. We've ensured the safety and security of the park's wireless networks for the residents, and also coordinated the Coachman Perks program, which offered discounts to more than 20 restaurants and businesses during the opening week. We related our sustainability efforts as this was our first solar-powered facility, and the rebirth of this community park ties into a number of our city objectives, specifically 2.3, 1.2, 3.3, 4.2, and 5.3. Another one of our biggest success was leading the efforts to create the North Greenwood CRA. This was a complicated process, and we could not have done it without the support of our community leaders and several key stakeholders. The new CRA plan was adopted by council in January of this year, and it was approved by the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners in May of this year. This new special tax district fulfills the city's objectives of 2.1, 3.1, 3.2, 3.4, and 5.3. This one, was a little bit, not a little bit, it was an embarrassment for us, but we turned it around into something that we're incredibly proud of. We fixed our recycling problem. In December of 2022, we discovered the truth that we had not recycled much of anything from July to December. We proactively told the public and the media about our wrongdoing and took swift steps to fix the program and resume recycling. We brought on a consultant to establish organizational best practices for the department. We changed the solid waste recycling department's leadership team, secured a new recycling contract, and resumed the processing of collecting recyclables. We also approved the issuance of customer credits. Those are happening now. And we created a transparency dashboard, this was our first one, to show what is recycled and you can see that on our screens. I'm happy to tell you that from January through September of this year, we've properly recycled more than 6,000 tons of materials. This meets objectives 4.1 and 2, as well as 1.1, 1.3, and 3.3. Going forward, we're going to do these in alphabetical order now. So with the crazy housing cost in the Tampa Bay area and beyond, anything that the city can do to make affordable housing more affordable for our residents is incredibly important to us. The city has secured credits to help leverage $21 million in equity for construction of the Clearwater Gardens, which is an 80-unit affordable housing complex. We closed on 30 affordable and workforce housing loans, which totaled nearly $3.4 million. We also went forward with the purchase of 12 assistance loans and 8 rehabilitation loans for over $1 million and 10 single-family construction loans for an additional $2.2 million. Economic Development Department approved 55 grants totaling over $275,000 for emergency repairs of owner-occupied homes and provided $675,000 in grant funds to 13 nonprofit organizations, services to low-income residents, including those at the Capri Mobile Home Park, which was acquired for redevelopment. Lastly, we provided more than $1 million in grant funding for 13 public facility improvement projects, and we're currently developing a dashboard that better explains our affordable housing. All of these efforts tie directly into Objective 2.4. The city was fortunate to receive more than $22 million of funding through the American Rescue Plan Act. We developed a transparency portal to show how we plan to spend this money. Last year, we spent more than $10.2 million of it. $1.4 million was distributed into grant awards to 25 projects associated with the North Greenwood CRA. Another $400,000 has been used to acquire strategic property in this area. $807,000 was spent on fiber system design and equipment upgrades to support our intelligence transportation system. We spent $2.7 million on loans and grants associated with increasing housing opportunities for our residents, and $1 million was transferred to the Pinellas Community Foundation for support of individuals and families in the emergency housing and social service needs. $571,000 has been distributed to 5 artist applications for culture referral grant programs, and $750,000 has been awarded to educational grants. This year, we provided $250,000 in grants funds to support the creation of the first operations of a tourism-focused business incubator, and $2.3 million has gone to city reimbursements. These funding efforts tie into objectives 2.2 through 2.5, 4.3, and 4.4. Did you know that the city's fleet team is one of the best in America? And that they have been for the 6th year in a row? It's pretty incredible. Our team has been recognized as one of the 100 best fleets in America by the National Association of Fleet Administrators. The city's ranked 53rd in the nation out of 38,000 public fleets. For this, we can thank our team of mechanics and technicians for their expertise and hard work every day. In addition, the city's fleet team is ahead of the objectives laid out in the Clearwater's Green Fleet Policy. These objectives tie into 1.3, 1.5, 4.1, 4.4, and 5.1. Our Public Works and Planning and Development team has completed several construction on several important capital projects this year. These include Coachman Park in the Sound, the District 3 Police Substation, Fire Station 46, and Cleveland Street improvements, including improvements at the MSB and Garden Avenue parking garages. Planning efforts are underway for next year's capital projects, which will include major renovations to the Clearwater Beach Marina, a new city hall, and several key road improvements in the Osceola parking garage. Our teams continue to work on stormwater projects, street resurfacing, transportation improvements, and many other exciting projects. These accomplishments tie into the objectives of 1.2, 1.5, 3.2. This one I know you're familiar with because they came to our council meeting, but in partnership with the Library Council of Upper Pinellas, the library assisted 15 Clearwater residents, including a library employee, to become a U.S. citizen through its citizen tutoring program. The program is just another example of how our library system is so much more than just books. The library is a thriving place that brings residents together and positively impacts the community that it serves. This program fulfills objectives 3.1 and 5.2. This year, the Clearwater gas system achieved a 5% new customer growth rate, which brings the total customer count to 33,000 natural and propane gas customers. The department added 1,500 new commercial and residential gas customers in an improved economy, and 13 miles of new gas miles were installed. This year, they sold more than $35 million of natural and propane gas services and sold more than 500,000 gasoline gallon equivalents to our national fueling system. These achievements exemplify Objective 1.3. This year, the city planned and hosted our first Living the Series culture. This brought together various community groups to celebrate one another and the diversity of our bright and beautiful city. Celebrations included World for Cultural Diversity Day, Juneteenth, and Pride Month, and then we just did our Hispanic Month as well. Clearwater is growing in diversity, and this city series celebrates the many people who make up our bright and beautiful city. The program will continue next year and beyond. In addition to the Living the Culture series, Clearwater is undertaking a diversity and equity study called Kaleidoscope that was just presented to you. We're looking forward to implementing the objectives that they provided to us. Back in February, the Clearwater North Greenwood Library partnered with the Clearwater African American Remembrance Committee, Pinellas County Schools, and the Clearwater Historical Society, the Upper Pinellas NAACP, the Black Cemetery Network, and the Pinellas Genealogy Society to present the 6th annual Night at the Library, a celebration of memories. The night featured a special dedication to students from the Pinellas High School class of 1969, where more than 230 people enjoyed special presentations from many different people. All of these important efforts tie into Objective 1.1, 2.5, 3.1, 3.4, 5.3, and 5.4. Our sustainability team conducted a municipal energy conservation program, which started last year and continues at this time. At the end of the program's first year, the city reduced its overall electricity consumption by 9%, and we reduced our natural gas consumption by 27% when compared to the baseline year. This reduction translates to a cost savings of more than $450,000 for electricity and natural gas, which is an incredible savings. This effort ties into our Green Print 2.0 and sustainability plan, as well as our objectives 4.2, 1.3, and 5.3. As we all are very much aware, the country is seeing an increased number of people each day who are experiencing mental health crises. Clearwater is no different. This year, the city was awarded $184,000 in grant funding towards the police mental health unit, which continues to provide valuable services. The department employs a full-time homeless outreach specialist who focuses on connecting people experiencing homelessness to social services, including mental health. The city also provides mental health services for its public safety employees and its city employees, where they can receive 5 free visits for counseling and mental health services each year. These important efforts tie into the city's objectives of 5.2, 3, and 1.4. This year, we also secured a new long-term lease to manage and operate the Clearwater Air Park with Fly USA. We completed a standard operating guidelines for Clearwater Air Park in conjunction with a new fixed-base operator. We also completed biannual checks to make sure we're in compliance with Florida state statutes, Federal Aviation Authority regulations, and accounting best practices. This agreement has created capital improvement funds which are going to go towards corporate hangars and a new terminal, of which Fly USA is putting forth their own capital for. We would not have been able to accomplish that on our own. This achievement meets objectives 1.1, 2.1, and 3.2. It's important to make sure that our public safety teams have the tools and equipment that they need to keep our residents safe. That's why last year we purchased 2 new fire engines. The engine for Station 50 is in service, and we will receive the one for Station 48 in early 2024. The equipment was purchased before a significant price increase happened and saved the city more than $100,000, so we appreciate the efforts on that. This important investment ties into Objective 1.2. I'm thrilled that Clearwater this year has a new sister city in addition to Nagano. Thanks to the hard work of our neighborhoods team, the city forged a new official sister city relationship with Maxapilcan, Mexico. We celebrated with their mayor and community supporters, and it was a great time. We are looking forward to all that we will learn from this community because of this new relationship, and we're already starting to see the fruits of that in the attendance of some of our events. This city has one of the best police forces in the country, and I'm proud of our police officers. This year, we increased public transparency by installing 14 additional Clearwater Police dash cam cameras in patrol vehicles, and the department increased its flock cameras citywide to 22 cameras. This has helped find stolen vehicles, wanted suspects, and missing individuals. The Clearwater Police Department's Real-Time Operations Center is an incredible asset that helps solve crimes and locate missing people in real time. We've seen several examples of that throughout the year. Those efforts ensure that the Clearwater provides first-class public safety and emergency response services. These investments meet Objective 1.1 and 1.4. Investing in public art and art appreciation helps to build a better sense of place in our community. The city focused on bringing Clearwater art into public spaces last year. We processed a call for artists for a mosaic mural installation that will enhance the Mercado, a public gathering space under construction at the Cleveland Street and Gulf to Bay Boulevard. In addition, an artist is secured and their design is approved for a mural that will go on the large water tank and countryside. We are also working on getting art at Coachman Park and Fire Station 46. In addition, the city was involved in hosting art exhibits that were very successful at the library for Clyde and Nikki Butcher. We also partnered with the Americans for Arts Foundation to help create economic impacts of art and cultural programming in Clearwater. Our residents completed 350 surveys, and we are examining the results, which we just received a few weeks ago. These efforts tie into Objectives 2.5, 3.1, and 5.3. Something that we've talked about for a couple years is our sidewalks and the backlog. The city continues to make incredible progress in repairing broken sidewalks. We've leveraged organizational success. Through collaborative engagement, the Public Works team achieved a significant reduction in the sidewalk hazards. The team used a comprehensive effort in both contractor and in-house forces, and I'm pleased with their successes. In addition to the sidewalk improvements, considerable effort and engagement is going into improving Clearwater's urban forest resource. We just had our new tree policy created and approved, and the tree inventory is being collected. We're engaging with the community and are focused on prioritizing, growing, and maintaining this vital resource for the city. This hard work ties into Objective 4.3, 5.3, as well as 1.2, 3.2, and 4.4. I'm getting there, I promise. I know it's a lot. The library partnered with the Pinellas Education Foundation and Pinellas County Schools in the Take Stock in Children program. Throughout this effort, the city assisted 16 middle-aged students from Clearwater East Community Library to win scholarship for 2 prepaid years at Florida College or University. This is yet another example of how important our libraries are, and this program ties into our objectives of 2.5 and 3.4. Better technology allows us to improve the way the city does business. I'm pleased to report that the city has made several technological improvements to our programs and processes this year. First and foremost, we have developed departmental public transparency portals called dashboards to show the amount of Clearwater's recycling processing, American Recovery Plan Act project budgets, and employee hiring and data. Dashboards are under development for planning and utility customer service for the rest of this year, and many more are planned throughout the upcoming years. Eventually, every department will have a dashboard. In addition to the dashboards, the city launched a vigorous website migration of its 5 websites from the city's main site, police, parks, library, and gas sections. The employee internet platform called the Launchpad. Clearwater also purchased a severe weather warning system that's going to be used for Clearwater Beach and the city parks during storm events. These improvements tie into citywide objectives 1.1, 1.3, 3.4, and 5.3. This past year, the city of Clearwater provided more than 4 billion gallons of drinking water to Clearwater's water customers, and we cleaned roughly the same amount of wastewater. Clearwater Public Utilities also produced and provided roughly 2 billion gallons of reclaimed water to customers. To protect the wastewater system, they lined more than 10.5 miles of wastewater pipes, cleaned an additional 15 miles, smoke tested 71 miles of sewer pipes, and lined 245 manholes. These employees work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to make sure that we have clean water for cooking and drinking, and that wastewater is properly processed, and that we hold true to our long-term water strategies by making reclaimed water available for lawns and landscaping. These efforts exemplify objectives 1.1 through 1.5, 3.2, and 4.2. So what's next? There's a lot of accomplishments for last year, and again, not all of them are listed. This year has seen significant change and challenges thrown at us, but the dust is starting to settle, and as you can see by how much we've accomplished, we're really settling into our work. The staff is resilient, and I am so proud of them for that. I look forward to another exciting year of working with some of the best employees I am fortunate to know and work alongside. We are ready. The I Make Clearwater Thrive priority is to connect our employees to our strategic plan. We have launched a competition amongst our staff so that they can submit in any format that they choose using their creative styles to tell us how they make Clearwater thrive. And we will be bringing forward weekly winners and a grand prize winner as that. The program or the competition goes through the end of the year. So it's just another way to connect our employees so they understand how they fit into the picture and why what they do matters. So the next steps are we are going to review our top priorities for the 23-24 fiscal year. We'll review the strategic plan and objectives each year to ensure that our work fits within the established plan. Our first meeting will happen on January 30th. We will start construction on a new city hall, and we hope to have a contract with the Phillies in place as well. The results of a housing study will be available, and we look forward to implementing the results from that. And we're also going to get to implement a new pay plan. We're going to continue to invest in our employees. We're going to launch an employee retention efforts that are going to help us continue to build and keep our talented and high-performing workforce. We will continue to develop and launch dashboards and also an asset management system that you all just heard of this week as well. We would also like to host a services fair to connect our employees and our residents to resources that are available in our Clearwater community. And we are coming up with plans for an improved public works complex as well. That's in addition to maintaining a very high level of public service. Again, I want to close by thanking our employees for their dedication, hard work, and support every day. Without them, none of this, what we have done, would have been possible. I also want to say thank you to the mayor and to the council for their support, because it takes you being behind us in order for us to get these things done. So thank you very much. I'm proud of what we accomplished, and I'm looking forward to the steps that lie ahead. And at this time, I will take any questions.
Excuse me, any questions for Mrs. Poirier? Yes, absolutely. Great job.
For them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. We appreciate it. Okay, approval of minutes. Do we have approval of minutes from the October 18th City Council meeting?
Move to approve agenda item 5.1.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 5.2, the October 2nd Special City Council meeting, approval of minutes.
Move to approve agenda item 5.2.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Consent agenda. Are there any items we pull from the consent tonight?
Mayor, I have a request to pull item 6.9.
Okay. Can we have a,
Sure. So move to approve consent agenda item 6.1 through 6.8 and 6.10 through 6.14.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, 6.9, please.
Authorize purchase orders to multiple vendors for the purchase of vehicle parts for heavy and light-duty vehicles and equipment in the not-to-exceed amount of $1.7 million for a term October 1, 2023 through September 30, 2024.
Good evening, Prairie Cons and Fleet Manager. The Fleet Division is requesting authorization to purchase vehicle parts from various vendors for heavy and light-duty vehicles and equipment. The vendors are listed below. Purchases will be obtained through various methods to include single-source, micro-purchases, and small-dollar purchases and piggyback contracts. The list of vendors with their procurement method is attached. Any questions?
Any questions or comments on this item? Is there anyone from the public who wants to speak to this item?
Now, we just heard Jennifer talk about, I'm Mr. Haluba. Thank you. We just heard talk about how the Clearwater fleet is one of the best in the country. Well, I don't know how that can be if we need $1.7 million worth of parts. I sent all of you pictures of the regular garbage trucks picking up recycle materials. And I actually received a response from Mr. Slaughter. But that goes to the point of the recycling problem is over. It's not over. It hasn't even begun to be solved. But you can stand up here and say all these things that are obviously not true, and we get a standing ovation from, Kathleen Beckman. Is there anywhere to project this? It's just, it's really disheartening to hear these things, when in fact, it has no bearing in reality. And that's just part of it. These trucks breaking down, that's been going on since back in Bill Horn's time. That's what caused the original recycle problem. And I think that, if you read Mr. Slaughter's response to me, they're using the same garbage trucks to pick up recycling. And, this keeps the stream separated. Well, I don't know how, if you're using the same trucks, I don't know how there's not cross-contamination. They're down for maintenance, they're out for maintenance. You likely noticed that the vehicle did not pick up both the black barrel and the recycling. But why did you think I wrote to you? That's exactly what's going on.
we'll be contracting with a lease company to rent vehicles when the inventory is stressed due to being out for maintenance. Why don't we just stop this fallacy of the recycling, and people that want to do it can bring it to the central location? Obviously, this is not the best equipment in the country because they can't even keep it on the road.
Anyone else? All right, anyone else want to speak to this? On this item? On this item only?
First off, I want to commend the police force because they're the best police officer.
Please identify yourself, sir.
I've been here 19 years. Hello?
Please, speak in the microphone. Identify
I
yourself.
thought my voice was loud enough. First off, I would like to congratulate and commend the police force. It is the best police force in the world I've ever met. I've been a lot of places. People are safe down here because of them. Secondly, you are not doing a good job recycling because I pick up litter all over Clearwater. I put paper and stuff that's like for cans and bottles, but you don't have a small hose. So people put paper in the recycling bin. Then I see families getting homeless. So we have pots and pans to recycle. They're going in the garbage. That's wrong. Perfectly good, they're not being recycled. You guys are not doing the best job of recycling. You don't have the best treatment because you're not even driving a recycling truck. You're driving one truck for everything. That's not right. Pinellas County and City of Clearwater is not doing a good job of saying. Also, your water system, where you use reclaimed water, you're basically poisoning people. That's sewer water. Why don't you use just rainwater? Enough said.
Anyone else want to speak to this item only? Okay.
How about affordable housing for the homeless? Be a good one.
All right, any more questions? Any questions, comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve item 6.9.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, please, no comments. Sir? All right, you had your time. Please, sir, you've had your time. No comments from the panel, okay? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. All right. I'm going to recuse myself because my son's firm represents these. So the vice mayor will take over, and I will leave the room.
All right, 7.1.
Vice Mayor, I have the ordinances here. I'm going to read all three. Actually, because it is second reads, I'll read them separately. So we have 9706-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing certain real property located on the west side of Meadowlark Lane, approximately 875 feet north of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, whose post office address is 210 Meadowlark Lane, Clearwater, Florida, 33759. Together with an unaddressed parcel located on the west side of Meadowlark Lane, approximately 760 feet north of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, together with all unincorporated right-of-way of Kentucky Avenue and an unnamed alley into the corporate limits of the city, and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said additions, providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this? The plan? We'll get you that. See us after the meeting, please.
Clay Gilman here on behalf of the applicant, 625 Court Street. I just want you to know we're here for any questions, if you have any for 7.1, 7.2, or 7.3.
Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 7.1.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. 7.2.
7.2 is ordinance number 9707-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to change the land use designation for certain real property located on the west side of Meadowlark Lane, approximately 875 feet north of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, whose post office address is 210 Meadowlark Lane, Clearwater, Florida, 33759, together with an unaddressed parcel located on the west side of Meadowlark Lane, approximately 760 feet north of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, from residential urban RU to institutional I upon annexation into the city of Clearwater, providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments? Anyone from the public? Um, I don't have an answer for you right now, sorry. All right, okay. All right, hearing no questions, do we hear a motion?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Right, 7.3.
Number 7.3 is ordinance number 9708-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by rezoning certain real property located on the west side of Meadowlark Lane, approximately 875 feet north of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, whose post office address is 210 Meadowlark Lane, Clearwater, Florida, 33759, together with an unaddressed parcel located on the west side of Meadowlark Lane, approximately 760 feet north of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, from R3 single-family residential to institutional I upon annexation into the city of Clearwater, providing an effective date.
Questions or comments? Anyone from the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 7.3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. 7.4.
Wait for the mayor to rejoin us. Item 7.4 is 9709-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing certain real property located on the south side of Downing Street, approximately 260 feet east of South McMullen Booth Road, whose post office address is 3121 Downing Street, Clearwater, Florida, 33759, together with all unincorporated right-of-way of Downing Street into the corporate limits of the city and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said addition, providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments on this item? Is there anyone from the public wants to speak to this item? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve item 7.4.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 7.5, please.
Item 7.5 is ordinance number 9710-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to designate the land use for certain real property located on the south side of Downing Street, approximately 260 feet east of South McMullen Booth Road, whose post office address is 3121 Downing Street, Clearwater, Florida, 33759, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as residential urban RU, providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments on this item? Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to this item? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 7.5.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 7.6, please.
Item 7.6 is ordinance number 9711-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by zoning certain real property located on the south side of Downing Street, approximately 260 feet east of South McMullen Booth Road, whose post office address is 3121 Downing Street, Clearwater, Florida, 33759, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as low-medium density residential, LMDR, providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments? Anyone want to speak to this item? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 7.6.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 7.7, please.
Number 7.7 is ordinance number 9712-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, making amendments to the Community Development Code by amending Article 3, Development Standards, Parking and Loading Division, by amending Article 4, Development Review and Other Procedures, General Procedures Division, by amending Appendix B, U.S. 19 Zoning District and Development Standards, General Provisions, Sub-District Standards, Site Design Standards, Building Design Standards, and Administration Divisions, by amending Appendix C, Downtown District and Development Standards, Character District Standards, Frontage Standards, Site Design Standards, Building Design Standards, Flexibility, and Administrative Divisions to comply with Senate Bill 250, Natural Emergencies, certifying consistency with the city's comprehensive plan and proper advertisement, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments on this item? Is there anyone that wants to speak to this from the public? Have a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 7.7.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. 7.8, please.
7.8 is ordinance number 9718-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing certain real property located on the southeast corner of State Road 590 and West Virginia Lane, whose post office address is 2713 State Road 590, Clearwater, Florida 33759, into the corporate limits of the city and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said addition, providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments? Anyone from the public want to speak to this? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve item 7.8.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. 7.9, please.
7.9 is ordinance number 9719-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to designate the land use for certain real property located on the southeast corner of State Road 590 and West Virginia Lane, whose post office address is 2713 State Road 590, Clearwater, Florida 33759, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as residential low RL, providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments on this item? Do we have anyone from the public who wants to speak to this item? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve 7.9.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 7.10, please.
Number 7.10 is ordinance number 9720-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by zoning certain real property located on the southeast corner of State Road 590 and West Virginia Lane, whose post office address is 2713 State Road 590, Clearwater, Florida 33759, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as low-medium density residential, LMDR, providing an effective date.
Any questions or comments on this item? Anyone from the public want to speak to this item? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 7.10.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 7.11, please. 7.11.
7.11 is ordinance number 9728-23, an ordinance proposing an amendment to the city charter, changing the date of Clearwater's municipal election beginning in 2026 to coincide with state and federal primary elections, creating a runoff election for each seat in which no candidate receives more than 50% of the vote in the municipal election, and modifying the dates for candidate qualification, commencement, and expiration of office and other time periods as necessary.
Any questions or comments on this item? Anyone from the public want to speak on this item? If not, do we have a motion?
Move to approve item 7.11.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
4-1 with Councilmember Beckman voting against. Okay, now it's time for citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Please fill out a card and provide it to the clerk, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Citizens to be heard not on the agenda.
I'm Mr. Haluba. Mr. Ongst, I'd like you to hold on, bite your lip, sit on your fingers. Most importantly, remain silent while I speak. Respect everyone's First Amendment rights, which you have a problem with. Now, Clearwater's in serious trouble. We have a city council that places undeserved glorification on an underperforming city manager. Apparently, to cover up ignoring the city charter in placing the city manager. It's nauseating. It's not gonna work. Recently, we saw the dog and pony show performed by the irritable Eric Gandy regarding Nick Paloma. Gandy took no responsibility. Just another indicator of the inbred culture at Clearwater Police. If anyone was expecting a list of policy changes to prevent the next Paloma incident, it's not there. It's not there because Gandy refuses to take his responsibility seriously. There's many more Palomas within Clearwater Police, but why is that? Clearwater Police does not perform detailed and complete background checks. Basically, if you can fog a mirror, you could be a Clearwater police officer. And this is another major fault of the city manager. Clearwater Police has a performance metric that they call self-initiated activity. They literally go around looking for trouble, and when they don't find any, they create trouble. Other law enforcement agencies grade officers on their quality of contact with the public, and I understand PCSO does this. It's much less confrontational and fosters trust and respect. I don't believe any meaningful change is possible with the irritable Eric Gandy as police chief. We cannot expect any significant citywide reforms under this paper tiger city manager. Mr. Gandy, vaffanculo stronzo.
Anyone else on pull items not on the agenda? Not on the agenda.
My name is Michael Taylor. I go by the Armed Fisherman on YouTube. I came to Clearwater almost 2 years ago, and I ran into a officer. I refer to her as Big Nasty. I think her name is Meg Hasty. She's a lieutenant. I met a couple detectives. They didn't know the law. Daniel Slaughter was sent a letter in 2020 to start training their officers on the open carry exceptions here in the state of Florida, and ignored that, and I got to meet Lieutenant McNasty. I then come to a council meeting where Slaughter is still the chief of police. The coward over here in the corner, I don't even care to acknowledge him, but your current chief decides to put his hands on me. That's the second time I've been to Clearwater and had my hands get put on by the police here. I then have a good friend of mine. You might know his name. His name is Honor Your Oath, Jeff Gray. He came here with a sign that said, "God bless the homeless vets." You then try to trespass him, possibly arrest him, and only until they went inside, and I'm thinking they talked to you, Mr. Bunker. I don't know for sure, but he talked to somebody inside the city management, and they were like, hey, he's allowed to do this. It seems like you have a problem with anybody that, hey, could be homeless here. I've seen plenty of videos of homeless people being ridiculed and persecuted by the police here. And for Mr. Margolis, you might want to write this down. The court case is called David Wartros versus State of Florida. If somebody wants to ask for money, it is completely legal. It's been decided in the Supreme Court. So leave the homeless alone. If they're saying, hey, you got an extra $1? You've got all this money that you're willing to give out to the city and to you for a raise and this, that, and the other. But for somebody to say, hey man, you got an extra $1? And that's gonna be a crime here? I think you need to relook this. And then on a final note, just so that I make Mr. Unks, the thin skin of Mr. Unks, so happy, Mark Twain said it best. You know where I'm going with this, don't you? Mark Twain
Go for
said
it.
it best.
This is your First Amendment right, remember?
Politicians in diapers need to be changed frequently. So, this is what I have to say to you, buddy. Yeah, I'm cool with you, bro. Yeah, right here. Yeah, cool, man.
That's your second warning. Please escort him. Turn the cameras off. Turn the cameras off. Get him out of here. Mark Twain also.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name's Andre Johnson. Came before, had a discussion, and Mayor said he was going to send someone to see me, and he did. I'm here on behalf of, on May 9, 2023, I filed a civil litigation claim against two city employees in their individual capacity. Without any written consent proof from the highest authority of the council or council in general, city attorneys David Margolis and Michael Fiono through Zoom intervened as legal representation for the individual capacity filing. Due to the representation of the city of Clearwater attorney's involvement, this led to an amending of the filing, adding the city of Clearwater, Minnesota Corporation. On August 1st, 2023, Assistant City Attorney Michael Fiono submitted a letter to me and Judge John Carrasas, who is your chairman of Planning and Zoning. The City of Clearwater's letterhead documenting case number 23-1911-S, requesting to deny me a day in court for proceeding. This had to be brought to the knowledge of the process of the second DCA. Due to these violations of the City of Clearwater's attorneys David Margolis and Michael Fiono, I filed a civil litigation claim on the attorneys for the unethical violations and the involvement of hindering my employment. The filing under the case number 23-006523-SC. On September 12, 2023, attorney Michael Fiono made an appearance as private counsel for attorney David Margolis and representing himself pro se as his own attorney. That was dual representation and city attorneys representing city employees with conflict of interest issues all in the same episode. The city attorney shall represent the city in legal proceedings, and the city shall, proceedings and shall perform any other duties prescribed by federal and state law, by the city charter, or by ordinance or resolution. The appointment of the city attorney shall be in accordance with the city charter and code. Under the entity model, the lawyer has only the organization as a client and not its individual elected officials, department heads, agents, or other constituents. The entity attorney must not create any impression that the agent for the entity is entitled to have information withheld from the entity itself, especially where the information may be adverse to the agent personally. So basically just the due representation of any entity or officer is forbidden in the absence of the entity's consent given by officer or any other the highest. So basically I'm just trying to figure out who authorized Mr. David Margolis to come to court and intervene in a civil claim against two city employees. That hindered the rights for the members of the department to be protected by their organizations that do that. They already have organizations in place for that. So again, as the man said, we need to know what city is authorized and what they're knowledgeable of. Are you even knowledgeable if this happened?
Thank you. Your time's up, sir. Thank you. Anyone else on items not on the agenda? Not on tonight's agenda.
Good evening to each of you. Javante Scott, resident of Clearwater. I'm here tonight as a student studying public policy administration, St. Petersburg College. And then for my capstone project, I chose to do a feasibility study on the topic of hybrid work for City of Clearwater employees in the Police Records Division. In doing so, I had to do a study collecting information, research on hybrid work as a whole, the laws, history, what all of that entails. Also, public and private comparison of hybrid work, how it works in the public versus the private sector, and also send a study survey to employees in the records division. And in doing so, that all of that information has been compiled into a report that will be presented and submitted to my professor for the capstone project. So I'm not here tonight to tell the city one way or another what it should or should not do on that topic of hybrid work. However, considering doing a feasibility study does not require a recommendation. Therefore, I would just say that if at some point the city does intend to look into hybrid work, that looking at the cost-benefit, doing a cost-benefit analysis or the lack thereof would be worthwhile. Based on the research that I've done, I can say that there are and will be some employees that will be and won't be interested for various reasons. But as I find myself on the cusp of graduation soon, I want to say thank you publicly to some of our city employees that have helped me along this way, to our Streets and Sidewalk Division, Police Records Division, as well as former Assistant City Manager Slaughter, Chief Gandy, Ms. Sanderson, Denise Sanderson, as well as Kayleen Castor, who have all met with me over the course of this, the time that I've been in this program. And so to each of you, thank you, and to you tonight, Council, thank you as well for allowing me to get an A on this particular assignment for presenting to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on items not on tonight's agenda, not on the agenda? Let's move on. City Manager reports, item 9.1, please.
Approve Second Amendment to sublease agreement providing to Amplify Clearwater as a sublessee, an amount not to exceed $250,000 for interior improvements to the property located at 3204 Gulf to Bay Boulevard, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Thank you. Good evening. Denise Anderson, Economic Development and Housing. We had a lengthy discussion on Monday, so I'd like to take a few minutes to review previously approved items related to this, the content of the proposed amendment for your consideration tonight, and finally the staff reasoning, if you will, for recommendation of approval. So as background, in 2017, the city entered into a 50-year lease agreement with the state for the subject property located at 3204 Gulf to Bay Boulevard. The property is a designated trailhead for Courtney Campbell Causeway Trail and will be the site of the future pedestrian bridge that will provide safe access to the trail on the south side of Gulf to Bay. The city pays $0 lease rate during the 50-year term, and in exchange, the city is responsible for maintenance, repair, utilities, operating costs, as well as any improvements. Such improvements must be aligned with the land use plan that's been submitted to the state and approved. In 2018, the city executed a 10-year sublease agreement with Florida Senior Games to occupy the second floor of the facility. The sublease rate is also at $0 during the term. The Florida Senior Games is responsible for certain insurances and applicable taxes. Additionally, the city transferred responsibility of improvements, maintenance, repair, and operating costs associated with second floor operations, as well as the cost of utilities, except for water and sewer, which the city retains. To date, no request for financial support or for an amendment to the sublease agreement has been received from Florida Games, which was one of the questions that was asked of me this week. In 2019, the city executed a 10-year sublease agreement with Clearwater Regional Chamber, which is now doing business as Amplify Clearwater, for the first floor of the facility. And like Florida Senior Games sublease, this is a zero-cost lease for the term length. And like Florida Senior Games, Amplify is responsible for the same kinds of costs I listed previously. The first amendment, approved on consent agenda in 2021, extended the lease to 2049. And if approved, pardon me, I skipped a page. I'm sure it was very important. This brings us to today's agenda item. On June 15th, Amplify Clearwater submitted a request to the city manager, and upon advice from City Attorney David Margolis and the Parks and Recreation sought guidance from the state. In September, the state indicated funding a sublessor for the improvements of interior improvements was at the discretion of the city, and that brings us to today. So the Second Amendment provides for an amount up to $250,000 for interior improvements to the first floor of the facility. Exhibit A, which is the business plan submitted by Amplify Clearwater, details the proposed improvements to the facility, which will modernize the space and provide ADA accessibility, and will welcome both visitors and trail users. Also stated in Exhibit A, Amplify Clearwater will be responsible for all operating costs associated with Visitor Center and will seek funding through local grants and business and community partners. Project funding distributions are detailed with 10% held back until project is completed and all final documentation is received. No other substantive changes to the sublease agreement are being proposed. If approved, Economic Development and Housing will oversee the construction project, and Parks and Recreation will continue to manage the sublease agreement. I think it's important to note that the sublease agreements are mutually beneficial. I'm referring to both that exist. The city's need for this facility is limited to its use as a trailhead facility, and occupancy by Florida Senior Games and Amplify Clearwater provides a measure of security and activation, which is important for a building that sits on the eastern edge of our city. Further, Amplify Clearwater will provide a valuable service to our target demographics, that is to our visitors and our businesses, while also supporting the city's efforts to provide accessible trailhead facilities. Staff recommendation is for approval of the Second Amendment to the sublease, providing for an amount not to exceed $250,000. Funding for the agreement will be provided by a first quarter budget amendment allocating general fund reserves. I'd be happy to take any questions. I would like to note that President and CEO Amanda Payne with Amplify Clearwater is here as well. Should you have any questions?
Any questions or comments on this item?
Thank you. Thank you, Denise, for some of that background information. I appreciate it.
Very welcome.
I do. So it was a robust, or it was a discussion on Monday, and I appreciate the information that was given. So I want to take a moment to just explain where I was coming from and what I've learned since Monday before we vote on this. So first, I want to be clear in stating that I very much, want our community to be thriving economically, obviously, I think we all do. And I want Amplify to be successful in association with that. And I know all the hard work they do, and I appreciate the hard work that they do day in and day out to promote Clearwater businesses. Secondly, I like to be collaborative with staff and with business partners and with my peers here as we make decisions. And in order for that to be successful, I need to be well-informed in advance about my decision-making. And where Councilmember Albritton had said on Monday, like we've been talking about this for a long time, I wasn't aware of how we might have been talking about this for a long time and didn't have any real background context. And so I had more questions on that. And then finally, as most of you are too, we look closely at the budget. And I'm always striving for a clear and public understanding of our spending and how that lines up with our budget that we've already approved and now we're amending, and with a return on investment. So I like to have clear goals, as you know, and track them for progress. So with that understanding, the work session agenda was published last Wednesday, and, I took a glance over it, and by Thursday I contacted our city manager and let her know I had some concerns about this agenda item. She said that was fine. I put together some questions and got those questions out on Sunday. And they were extensive questions. They were like 27 questions. And so I appreciate that Denise and Art Cater, our Parks and Rec Director, worked hard to get answers for me, and really it was for us, because all those questions and answers were shared with all of the council. So I do appreciate that. Although those answers came, right after the meeting, so that's why there were a lot of questions during the meeting, which is understandable. After that Monday meeting, and even with the answers, I had some more questions, and so I reached out to Amanda Payne, CEO of Amplify, And she was gracious enough. We had a phone call on Wednesday morning that was very productive and informative, where I got more of that historical context that Denise, you just went over about the history of that building. And so here's what I learned, and I want to go through this just in the spirit of transparency and a fuller picture based on my questioning on Monday, so that people can understand the rationale of a couple of further questions I have, to clarify our risk at the end of this. So with my conversation with Amanda, she had said that, she inherited the original lease from her predecessor at, it was the Chamber of Commerce at that time. And so her understanding is that a number of years ago, and this is where, Denise, I hope you can clarify, that the city actually approached the state to acquire control of this property to use it as a trailhead. So was it our initiative to get control and have that 50-year lease at no cost to have control of that building, correct?
I believe that is correct, but I was not responsible for that request. I believe that came out of Parks and Rec and was probably directed by Mr. Horn at that time.
Okay. And to have a visitors center trailhead and bathrooms at the county trail, and that all makes sense. I think that's probably good to have a trailhead facility there. So then, as Amanda and my conversation went on, she said the city had in mind that the chamber would run that visitor center there, as our city did not have appropriate staffing or expertise staff to fund a visitor center. This makes sense to me. Does that make that lines up?
That's my understanding as well. Again, I was not a project lead at that time.
Okay. So then the chamber signed that contract with the city in, did you say it was 2017 or 18, the initial contract?
With the state, that was in 2017.
Okay, we did with the state.
Correct.
Okay, but then the chamber signed that contract with the city in I think it was 2017 or 18, I think you might have.
No, Florida Senior Games was in 2018, and the Greater Clearwater Regional Chamber in May of 2019.
Okay, 2019, okay. To operate a visitor center out of that building, and the annual rent would be zero. We're not charged a rent. We're going to pass that on to Amplify. They're not going to charge a rent. But as with Senior Games, they were responsible for utilities and insurance, utilities except water, sewer, and insurance, and any operating costs and any improvements. So they had the same lease that was here. And they would be responsible for any cost to improve the interior of that building as well as operational costs. To me, that was a bit of a red flag, because I don't understand, why the chamber, and this isn't Amanda's chamber, but the predecessor, why the chamber would sign a contract where they are responsible for all interior upgrades and maintenance or repair when they don't own the building, and especially when what has been reported to me about the condition of the building. But they signed it, and then they would also be responsible for paying insurance and utilities except water, correct? But they have never occupied that building since they signed that lease in 2019, right? And they haven't paid any of those fees in accordance with that lease.
They have not paid any insurance. There are no operating costs. They've not paid any insurance because they've not occupied, so there's no.
But there are utilities to keep it, cooled so it doesn't get all moldy down there, right? Or is Florida Games, are they absorbing all the utilities of the whole building?
I don't know. I would presume that Florida Games is paying the full freight on that. I don't know if those spaces are separately metered.
I would bet they're probably not, but anyway. Okay, so then at about that time, or in 2019, the chambers merged and became Amplified Clearwater, and then COVID hit. The first floor of that building remains unoccupied. And then in 2021, Amplify asked Clearwater for an extension to the lease for 30 years because they were hoping to qualify for an ARPA funding from the county to use that building.
Penny for economic development funding.
Right.
Yeah.
And that extended lease was part of a requirement. They need to have at least 30 years.
Correct. That was a requirement the county imposed.
Okay. But they were not successful. So now they would like to open a visitor center there.
I should clarify, the application was withdrawn because it was no longer intended to be used as an incubator, and that was a qualifying condition.
Okay. But where, where there's a little bit, for transparency, while Amanda had said, to me that she inherited this lease about Amplify is responsible for any repairs or maintenance inside, making it ADA compliant. She might have inherited that 10-year lease, but Amplify did sign on to the 30-year lease without a change in that stipulation, right?
That is correct.
Still there, okay. And so what Amplify is asking for now is $250,000 to bring it up to be functional, the way they want it to be functional and ADA compliant. But they are asking the city to fund the internal upgrades to make it ADA compliant and more pleasing to visitors and workers. In my conversation with Amanda, it seems that this is a City of Clearwater desire and that we're going to partner with Amplify to have them run it. That's accurate?
I would say that it's mutually desired, certainly, because as a trailhead facility, we wish it to be safe, accessible, and pleasant.
Okay. And part of that background understanding is to know when it started, with the city wanting it and pursuing it from the state and then going forward. I didn't have that understanding before, that it was really a city initiative. With this agenda item, I thought it was solely a chamber Amplifies initiative. So it was nice to have that clarification from Amanda. And so I think it's fine to have a visitor center there. I think it would serve well for people utilizing the trail. I do have a few concerns, and those are about the long-term operational expenses of that facility. And so in Amplify's business plan that we have, they indicate that they will seek funding from businesses and community partners and local grants. And I wonder if that's enough. Part of your response here, when I asked about whether or not TDC funding could be used to improve that building, you responded that TDC funding or Visit St. Pete Clearwater views itself as a marketing agency, and as such, it typically limits funding to organizations like Amplify to marketing, staffing, and other operating expenses associated with increased visitor engagement. So to me, it seems like TDC funds could easily help them fund the operations of that.
Sure, and it could be used for installations like murals, exhibits, and other sorts of things that exemplify a visitor experience or attract a visitor.
Okay. So I think all that's fine. I'm ready to, vote in favor of the $250,000, but I do have some concerns and wonder about the contract that we'll have for this, because I want to know what out do we have if we allocate $250,000 for interior improvements, and Amplify has a 30-year zero-cost and $0 lease for 30 years. We put $250,000 into that building, and then if they, for some reason, can't secure funding for operations, what power do we have to take back that building and utilize it?
I'm going to defer that to our city attorney, who likely has the termination language in front of him.
So I was not here when the lease was originally done, but it appears that that language has remained intact. In other words, it has not changed since the original lease. Based on the original verbiage, it appears that with 6 months' notice, that termination can be effective. Keep in mind that we are only leasing ourselves, right? This is not a building that we own,
Right.
and so any right that we ever exercise or would want to exercise is always is subordinate to the state. So everything more or less requires, their sign off is subject to them. They're really in charge of it, and they, oftentimes do not want to part with that authority. But we do have authority on 6 months' notice to terminate the contract, as I read it, based on the original verbiage, which at least at first glance does not appear to have changed since the original contract.
And that's like terminate for some kind of cause or something? And we don't just randomly terminate from them?
I wouldn't say randomly, but the language that was used back in, a few years ago was for any reason whatsoever. That's a verbatim quote, is literally for any reason whatsoever.
Wow.
So that's some pretty strong language, I would say.
Okay, so we have it for 50 years at zero cost from the state, and then we've subleased it to Amplify for 30 years for no rental cost. Okay.
That is my
Okay.
understanding.
And then also, what are our expectations for activating the visitor center? So once we invest 250 in to get it looking nice, what are our expectations about how often it's open?
I would ask that Amanda Payne respond to that question. I have not seen a proposal for operating hours, and she may have a better sense of that.
Thank you, Denise. Good evening, everyone. Amanda Payne, President and CEO of Amplified Clearwater. Councilmember Beckman, I heard your question, and I'm happy to address it. So we operate much like we do at the Beach Visitor Information Center, 7 days a week. Those hours do vary whether or not we're in season or out of season, so we don't keep it open as long during the off-season as we do during the busiest seasons. So we'd have a similar model in this facility as well.
Okay. So a beach lease was provided at a later time, so I've got that. So it was, yeah, a certain number, like a minimum of 35 a week or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, so we can expect the same thing out there?
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds fine. Thank you for that information, I really do. I think it's just, for me, it's important to have a larger picture and the responsibility and the risk and the expectations, and that's all.
Well, I appreciate you recapping because most of us in this room were around when the original lease was signed. So it's nice for everyone to hear the history.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Any other questions for Ms. Payne while she's up here? All right, anyone from the public want to speak to this item? Okay, if not, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 9.1.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. 9.2, please.
Amend Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Chapter 21, Offenses, repealing Section 21.18 relating to prohibiting soliciting, begging, or panhandling in the Clearwater Downtown Core Redevelopment Zone and the Clearwater Beach Core Tourist Zone, and pass Ordinance 9727-23 on first reading.
Evening, Mayor, Council, Eric Gandy, Clearwater Police Department. So this is in line with our efforts to clean up unused or obsolete ordinances, and I'll be glad to answer any questions related to this one if you'd like.
Any questions or comments on this item? Anyone from the public want to speak to this item? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 9.2.
Second?
All in
Mayor, if
favor? Oh, excuse me, we have to have an ordinance, or the reading of the ordinance. My mistake.
No problem. This is ordinance number 9727-23 before the council on first reading. An ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, repealing Chapter 21, Section 21.18 of the Code of Ordinances relating to soliciting, begging, or panhandling in the Clearwater Downtown Core Redevelopment Zone and the Clearwater Beach Core Tourist Zone, providing an effective date.
Now do we have a motion and a second?
Move to approve agenda item 9.2.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, 9.3, again, I will have to recuse myself because my son's firm represents this applicant. I'll turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
Determine that two parcels of real property owned by the city and recorded in OR book pages 3308, 514, and 6275, 724 at 110 North McMullen Booth Road in Pinellas County, Florida are uneconomic remainders of land as defined in City Charter Section 2.01, D, 5, I. Approve the sale for less than fair market value to the adjoining landowner and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Good evening, council members. Robert Kasmer, Public Works Engineering, Real Estate Coordinator. I must say first that I somehow lost my unknown amount of reading glasses, so I'm going to try my best to read the large font here. The item before you this evening is a revisit to the disposition of two uneconomical parcels to the adjoining landowner. These uneconomical parcels, due to limiting size, landlocked location, ongoing city insurance liability, and the tremendous cost to develop them for any purpose, should be considered a burden to the city, therefore should be sold to the adjoining landowner. In further conversation on October 5, I was asked two questions at that time. One was concerning price, the second was concerning taxable value. We have since contacted Pinellas County. We were informed there will be no taxable value to the property, being associated as what it is and to be used for the same purpose. The second question was price. We reached out to the landowner, and they did make an equitable offer of $2,000. Now, at first, that struck me as somewhat questionable, but again, as a broker, I dug into the MLS, I dug into Crexi, I did what is considered to be a BPO, broker's price opinion, and I could not find a parcel, any parcel, that had over $240,000 of liability to it with any value to be repurposed. That's what this parcel is. It has a $240,000 bill to it to hopefully attempt to try to make 1 penny, which, again, that's not my choice to make or decide. But again, the current utilities on this property shall be deed reserved and will be relocated by whomever. And city staff have reviewed and approved this recommendation. And any questions, please?
I do appreciate all the detailed information on this. It seems like it's been a long journey for the folks who want to acquire this. I just want to say, Pastor Willie, who's part of this, he gave the prayer to start the meeting, and that wasn't planned. So we're not trying to stack the deck here for Pastor Willie. He was nice enough to get up and fill in when no one else was here. Do we have any questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, anyone from the audience, from the public?
We're going to show a PowerPoint here, but I also have slides on paper if we do not have that ready. There we go. All right. And do we have the remote? Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm Clay Gilman with McFarland Ferguson, 625 Court Street, here on behalf of the purported purchaser of the 2 parcels contemplated by this item 9.3. As you can see here, this is the sale of 2 parcels totaling 4,600 square feet to Calvary for the sum of $2,000. My client has heard a few concerns from the council, as well as from citizens, and would like to just address those individually. So first, as Robert got up here and told you, the appraised value is a little misleading, as the appraised value does not account for the use or the surrounding uses. It simply takes that size parcel and the zip code and tells you kind of what that value should be. As you can see here, this is just west of a cul-de-sac. It's a sidewalk that is surrounded to the east by a road, and the north, west, and south by Calvary's property. Furthermore, Calvary has invested significant time and expense into working with the city collaboratively to determine the history of the parcel. So we think that $2,000 price would be fair, including the amount of time that and money that Calvary's already invested into this parcel. Why this will not set a precedent? Each piece of land that is declared an uneconomic remainder must be evaluated on its own merits. Each piece of real estate will be considered unique and will require a different analysis. As you can see here, this is a 40-foot by 115-foot sidewalk surrounded by Calvary's property. And there's really no economic use for this parcel for any owner except for Calvary. As Mr. Kasmer said, there is significant stormwater utilities underneath here that make it extremely difficult to develop anything that is economically feasible. We've also heard some concerns that there will be additional traffic from Cleveland Street onto Calvary's parcel. That is not correct. The city has approved plans which do not contemplate any connection from Cleveland Street to Calvary's campus. Any deviation from the plans that have been approved, as you can see here, the cul-de-sac ends and there is no construction contemplated there. So any further deviation from these plans will require planning and development process again, and then come back to the city council in order to revise those plans. During the early stages of the plans, the idea was contemplated to connect Cleveland Street to the campus, but Calvary has no plans at this time to disturb the cul-de-sac at the end of Cleveland Street. Finally, why this sale is not unfair to taxpayers. We've heard that several times, and as Mr. Kasmer has said, this parcel does not have any taxable value. If it is conveyed to Calvary, it won't have taxable value, and even if it did, there's really no substantial taxable value for this small parcel. These parcels require maintenance, which, again, as Mr. Kasmer said, is a burden on the city and an insurance liability due to the stormwater infrastructure that is costed to maintain. Selling these parcels to Calvary would shift that responsibility to them as the property owner. And if you have any questions in relation to the slides or anything whatsoever, please feel free to ask.
Questions, comments? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 9.3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it's unanimous. And we'll move on to the city attorney reports.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Wait for the mayor to rejoin us.
Mayor, council, my apologies. I just swallowed wrong.
Wrong
I'm
time.
very embarrassed, but I want to apologize to you for that.
I'm glad you're okay.
Okay, I am fine.
As long as you stay upright.
Embarrassed, but fine.
It is my time for city attorney's reports. So, Mayor, I would like to make actually a couple comments. I don't normally address or respond to a lot of citizen input, but I think I will actually this evening just for a couple points. Number one, I know the council has heard a couple times from Mr. Johnson, who has come in, not Mr. Johnson, our former council member, Mr. Johnson, the gentleman who has filed a lawsuit against a couple of our police officers. To be clear, he is completely, fantastically, and egregiously wrong when it comes to our ethics and legal responsibilities. When city employees get sued in their official capacities, or when they get sued for matters relating to their employment in some way, the city attorney's office is not only authorized, but we are ethically obligated to represent our employees. Because of the nature of what police officers do, it tends to be police officers who get sued individually, right? Just not as common to have individual city employees interacting with the public in the way that police officers do. But there's nothing unique about police officers. The fact is, if we had a stormwater worker who was sued in his individual capacity, or a Parks and Rec employee, or a library employee who was sued as individuals, we would be representing them as well. On rare occasions, there can be a conflict of interest situation, which we vet very carefully in the city attorney's office. That could happen, for example, in a police context where a police officer may have been investigated by internal affairs. If a violation has been found by the agency, we may decide to outsource that and give that to outside counsel so that we don't create a conflict within my office between our responsibility to the chief when it comes to representing him in employment matters versus our responsibility to the individual employee to represent them in the lawsuit. But that was not an issue at all in Mr. Johnson's case. He filed a lawsuit on his own. He was not represented by counsel, and he filed a Florida bar complaint that was completely dismissed. So just wanted to say for the record that he is completely wrong in all respects about that. The second thing I would say is I wanted to thank Mr. Hightower as well as Mr. Johnson and the rest of the Charter Review Committee. So the nature of my work oftentimes means I don't get to have that much interaction with the public. And so that's something that I miss sometimes, but it's an inherent feature of what I do. And because I think as a city attorney, there's a danger that when I interact with the public, they can attribute things that I say to the council, number one, which may not be necessarily the view of the council or may not be the views shared by everyone on council. And number two, I have to be careful because I cannot give legal advice to the public. and cannot offer legal opinions to the public. So I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with Charter Review because I don't get that opportunity very often. I think that was a very good committee. I agree with Mr. Hightower's point that there were a lot of diverse views expressed within the committee. I do think people generally spoke up. There were a couple exceptions, but I think people generally made their views heard. And certainly, as you saw from the way they voted on different issues, it was clear to me, as someone who was sitting there the whole time, that people were not shy about voting the way that they felt was appropriate according to their conscience. Some suggestions we may want to take going forward could be to codify some of the operating parameters of the Charter Review Committee. Because it does not come up very often, it's only once every several years, and because this is my first time representing the City of Clearwater's Charter Review Committee, this has really been my first look at how we do things in Clearwater. We do not currently have any ordinance or anything codified that describes precisely the methodology by which either members are selected by the council, apply to the council, or the method by which they disband, the timing of presentations, et cetera. And I do think that would be helpful. I think that's some suggestions we can take to heart. And so if that is something the council is interested in, that is something that we could accomplish by ordinance. And I'd be happy to take the lead on that and bring an ordinance forward that might give some more formality based on individual feedback that I can get from council members. And then if there's a desire to do that, then council can help shape that process. But I think that would prevent some of those issues for next time, particularly when it comes to the difficult timing issues, because timing is a strange thing when it comes to ballot questions and elections, because on one hand, we have to give enough notice to the supervisor of elections to make the next ballot. But on the other hand, the other complications depend on which election you want it to go on. So if you want it to go on March, that's one thing. But if you want to call a special election later, the timing of that is very different. Also, some ballot questions are much simpler and much more complicated than others. So the particular ballot question that the council is advancing, one that has to do with runoff elections and simultaneously changing the dates of our elections, is a particularly delicate, complex matter that needs a lot more attention, a lot more wordsmithing than some of the other changes that were discussed by the committee, which candidly are simpler changes. Not saying they're good or bad, just saying that they're things that if the council wanted to put them on the ballot, things like increasing the number of council members can be done very easily, very quickly. There's not a lot of open heart surgery that's being done on the charter, whereas some of the other things they're talking about, like districts, for example, is an enormously complex conversation that opens several sub-issues. So those are all things for the council just to think about. And so if there is a desire to give some more formality to that process, my advice would be that that would be helpful, and council will have the opportunity to shape that. So with that, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's a great idea to take a harder look and drill down on the Charter Review Committee and set some more robust parameters in place. Up to you guys to do that. So, all right. Anything else?
Nothing for me, sir.
Yes. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that this should be our last meeting and needing to use the county facilities, and I wanted to make sure that we said our sincere appreciation to the county on their flexibility. We've had several meetings here, and they've worked with us on that. And also to the staff that has assisted in running our meetings with their technology. So thank you very much to the county for that.
Yeah,
Looking forward to being home, but it has been very nice to
Absolutely.
be here.
It's been great to have a great facility like this with great people and great staff. We appreciate you guys back there in the control room. Thank you very much. You did a great job. And everybody, our staff and everybody that coordinated this. It was rather seamless in a less than ideal situation. And I'll leave it at that. Okay. Other council action. Councilmember Teixeira.
Yes, so I brought this item forward for discussion regarding the challenges to logistically schedule 2 meetings in 2 sessions on some of the rather challenging months. And since then, there's been some discussions, and there has been support by some staff. However, there has been some concerns that were communicated to me that I felt was at least warranted a moment to pause. Some resonated more than others. I still do believe that logistically it is easier to schedule or coordinate all these schedules for 2 meetings versus 4. But one concern that especially resonated with me is that there might be a negative impact on the permitting process. And that is something I'm not comfortable doing. And so at this point, I appreciate the staff's feedback, and I think that we should just stay as is.
Okay, council closing comments. We'll start with the vice mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to something that Mr. Taylor, the armed fisherman, said, giving me potential credit for a change in the police officers' attitudes in that viral video. I was not in the building. I was not aware of it until I saw the video online like everyone else. I will say in the officer's defense, police officers are not attorneys. They don't have every facet of the law at their fingertips. And lawyers don't either. Lawyers do a tremendous amount of research to come up with their arguments. So I think what happened was proper, that there was a mistake made and there was a change that was put into place now, and that won't happen again. And that's part of the learning process. It's not like anyone was wrestled to the ground, as I recall. So I am a person who firmly believes in freedom of speech. And I'll always fall on the side of that. I've had my own encounters with police officers where they may have been a little off in the law, and a judge had said the same thing, but I didn't take that personally at all. I wasn't out to shame or embarrass them. That's the way things happen. Anyway, I'm not the hero of Mr. Taylor's story. That's all I wanted to say. Oh, and I had a scathing takedown of David Miscavige, leader of Scientology, that probably would have gotten them stripped of their IRS tax exemption, but there's no time for that tonight. I hope I remember it for another meeting.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Beckman.
Thank you. So I wanted to take just a minute to say thank you so much to city staff who work really hard to answer my questions to help me make the best decisions here on the dais. Thank you to our staff who helped coordinate the recent visit of high school students from Nagano, Japan during our sister city exchange. The city hosted a potluck kind of going away send-off dinner last Friday that I attended along with Chief Slaughter. It was really joyful. Oh, sorry, Dan Slaughter, Dan Slaughter, Assistant City Manager Dan Slaughter. It was really fun and joyful with dancing and food and games. Yesterday, I attended the Prospera Success Stories event in Tampa, and Prospera is an economic development nonprofit organization specializing in providing free bilingual assistance to Hispanic entrepreneurs trying to establish or grow their businesses. And Clearwater supports that effort financially. So I want to thank our Clearwater economic development leaders, Audra Aja and Stephanie Scalia, Chuck Lane, and Dania Perez for their commitment to this program. They attended that event as well as me. And then next Friday, Mayor, I don't know if it's part of your announcements, but I'm excited that next Friday is our Veterans Day event at Crest Lake Park, beginning at 10 a.m., and I hope you can join us there. And then finally, I just wanted to say congratulations to our city manager, Jennifer, on a really great State of the City presentation. I only saw the PowerPoint and wasn't privy to your text, but it's incredibly impressive. And under your leadership, I think we have new momentum and real positive energy moving forward. So you're doing really great things, and I'm happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Albritton.
Okay. Since I am the City of Clearwater representative to the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, the PSTA, I had a legislative committee meeting Wednesday, and I was shown a draft of a local bill that's coming up, and I passed out, I know it's short notice, but I just became aware of this yesterday. It's a draft of a local bill put together by Linda Cheney, who's a representative out of St. Pete Beach. And she's, looks like she's taken the opportunity she's going to file this bill that pretty much demolishes the PSTA. It takes all the representation out of all the municipalities that represent PSTA and put it in the hands of the county and one member of City of St. Petersburg, and then one member elected by the governor. To me, it kind of takes away, that's the first thing that really hit me, is it really takes away the authority as a special taxing district from PSTA, because it doesn't represent, becomes almost a subsidiary of the county. Then she goes on to list, she wants to take away some of the powers. Let's see here. She wants to offer no free fares except to veterans unless approved by Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners in 2 public meetings. This is one that's kind of vexing. Any contract must be competitively bid by a minimum of 5 contract options and voted upon by the governing body authority. Sometimes, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but the trolley, we have a contract with a trolley. Well, we don't have 5 different trolleys to pick from. We've got one, so that's a little vexing to me. Then she goes on to say that, she wants the wrapping, tinting of windows and advertising to conform with the law, which we do now anyway. She wants monitored ridership, which we do performing metrics, which we do. And then she goes on to say, we want to have your, your budget practices. We want you to be, to have every year have an audited of your financials, which we do. In fact, we've won an award for the past 5 years of our auditing. To me, and I want to recognize that Representative Kim Burfield is here listening to this. I was just vehemently opposed when I read this, and I was shocked. To me, it's a retribution bill, and I'll tell you why. This comes from the city of St. Pete Beach, which didn't want the Sunrunner. The Sunrunner ended up going over there. And then the reason why she wants free, all this other stuff in here is because we had an issue with some of the homeless riding the bus free to St. Pete Beach. They didn't like that. They didn't like all the homeless getting off there. So we ended up changing it and going back to a fare. But I would like to see Clearwater give a resolution opposing this. I guess it's going to become a bill. It's got to go back to, they're going to have to, I think on the front end, if we come out strong and say we oppose this, that would be the best course of action at this point. I know that I sent Dave Margolis a copy of a resolution by Alan Zimmett, and I'm sure Dave could come up with something for us representing the city of Clearwater. But that's what I'm kind of asking tonight. And I know it's short notice. I know you all haven't had a chance to read through this whole thing, but I've kind of hit the high points on it. If you want to, this front page here, the first page, kind of tells some synopsis of what this is, and it's like throwing a landmine into the whole thing.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So I was at the legislative delegation meeting, so I think it was last Wednesday.
Right.
And she spoke about this, and Rep. Cheney did. And, you know, from what I recall is she made a statement that voters voted a number of years ago against having taxpayer support for PSTA, and she feels like taxpayers are supporting PSTA now. And that was kind of what she mentioned. I agree with you. I think we need to keep PSTA, and it's crucial in our incredibly densely populated county that needs affordable transportation options. We need safer streets with mass transit. We need to reduce pollution and cars on the street with mass transit. But there is another legislative delegation meeting that she said, I think it's November 28th, it's the last Wednesday, where she said this bill would be in its form. So I didn't realize it was going to come out this quickly, that they're going to discuss it. So I don't know if there's a chance to speak during that meeting. I don't know the format of that meeting. But if we wanted to sign a letter or present something, it might be good to do it at that
That's
time.
what I think. That's what I'm saying. I don't even think PSTA has a December meeting. We just had our last one. So the board there, and I've spoken to some of the county board members, you know, county commission, and they've surprised them too. I don't think they want to have the authority to do that. So it's kind of surprising everybody right now. And I'll tell you what, you know, I'm wearing this pen right here. This is a PSTA award-winning. PSTA was awarded the best transit facility or authority in the country in its size just about a month ago. And you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's kind of my last call on this thing here. I think we're doing everything the right way, and I'd hate to see all these representatives, Pinellas Park, Dunedin, Clearwater, Oldsmar, Safety Harbor, Tarpon Springs, Bel Air Bluffs, Gulfport, Kenneth City, Seminole, South Pasadena, not having a say in their transit authority. So I guess what I'm asking today is everybody on board with signing a resolution saying that we don't support this?
I'd like to look into this a little bit further. I know it's time. What's the timing that can we talk about that? This is the next work session? It's the 16th, I believe, and this doesn't come up until, what you said, the 28th? You know, because I got a ton of phone calls on this today, ton. And there are some people for it and some people against it. I don't know, because I just got it. I was just told kind of what was in it. But my thing would be, if we supported this legislation, we would have to have a guaranteed seat. There's no way around that. We need a guaranteed seat with Clearwater Beach and with everything else going on. The multimodal center is supposedly going here, if we can find a spot for it. But there are some people at the county and the county commission that feel like the board, these kind of boards need more oversight and actually have somebody to report to, that the executive directors do. And I know that's been a frustration in some areas. I won't say as much maybe at PSTA, but then I know there's some people that are frustrated with the executive director. And I don't know enough about it. I'm just passing on what I've been told today by people that called me. So before I say, yeah, let's just send a resolution saying, we don't like this, I think I'd like to learn a little bit more and maybe have a discussion at a work session.
I know it's short notice.
Give it a robust review.
Yeah.
Do our homework, get some information from our clerk, from our city attorney and manager, if they can find some more information, and let's talk about it, and let's make a course of action from there and go from there. And we can talk to, I know Representative Burfield's always available. I'm sure Representative Cheney is too, as are the senators that are in the area. So that would be my preference, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay.
Fair enough? Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Those are, it is alarming, but yes, Ms. Teixeira.
Okay, so before I go into my spiel, I just read this a couple of hours ago, and I need time to process it. But let me tell you what I'm not surprised is that St. Pete still has representation. That's not a surprise, all these changes, but St. Pete still does. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Clearwater needs to have more of a presence regionally, and this just solidifies my belief that everything goes south. Okay, on a good note. I celebrated my birthday yesterday, And
Happy
like
birthday.
every year, I count my blessings, and I have a lot to be thankful for, my health and my family's, my two great kids, my husband who's my rock, and my sister who flies in every year. But this year, I have two more things to add to my blessings. And the first is the city staff. I've really come to care for them. They're now becoming my extended family. And yesterday, they really, they touched me. They sang happy birthday, not only in one language, but two. And the red velvet cupcakes were divine. The other thing that I was grateful for is that I now have a city that is offering me more than it's ever offered before. Incredible diversity in performing arts, concerts, markets, art walks, dancing in the streets, and I'm very appreciative of that. And I think next year, I'm going to be even more thankful of the way we're going. So I am very thankful for this city.
Thank you, and happy birthday. Just second what Councilmember Beckman said, yeah, we'll hope to see everybody for the Veterans Day celebration. We'll be there, I believe it starts at 10 or 10:30 on Saturday, is it November 11th, I think? Yep. So look forward to that. I want to thank the Charter Review Committee for their work and, working through whatever little misunderstandings we had here or there. But they did a great job, and we appreciate that. And, as far as people coming up and talking about First Amendment, I'm all for that. That's fine. But I will not tolerate in the meeting I run obscene gestures, which is against the rules, and/or profanity. That will not be tolerated. You can come up and if you can talk about us and our policies, that's fine. And even if we don't like what you're saying, you have the right to do that. But again, obscene gestures and profanity will not be tolerated while I'm the mayor of Clearwater. I want to make that perfectly clear to anybody out there who's watching, and that's what we're going to do going forward. Good meeting, and we will see you all next time. Thank you.